Looks like Counselor Ballard, Counselor Scott, myself, and Counselor Johnson's here. We'll excuse Frank tonight. He had some business that he's attending to. Could we get you to give the invocation, Cecil? Would you mind doing that for us?
Sure. Our Heavenly Father, as we gather together tonight, we're thankful for thy many blessings upon us. We're thankful to live in this part of the United States, and we're thankful for the opportunity that we have to work together and to strive to accomplish the good things for our community and for the area here. We are thankful to live in this area and to be able to enjoy the beauties of the world around us. Wilt thou bless us this night that we may be able to accomplish the works that need to be done for the improvement and the workability of our community, so that we can work together for its improvement and for our desires to grow and to better ourselves here. We ask these blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I'll follow us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move into the public comment part of the meeting. If there's any comments on stuff farther down in the
Yeah, it should be after this, but it's not gonna mess anything up.
Yeah, we'll just go ahead.
I don't think, do you have any papers? Did anybody
Yeah,
sign it?
I got
Oh, okay.
one here. We have a public comment form here from Ed Jensen.
Just in light of the agenda, I wanted to express a sincere thank you to our police department. I had a situation a few months ago that was pretty serious. They responded very professionally, very intelligently, and took what was going to be probably a very difficult situation and calmed it down. It ended up turning out very well. I won't get into specifics, but I just wanted to express my appreciation for all they do.
Thank you. That's all of the public comment period there.
Once we go on to the agenda, there's no more public comment, so if anybody has anything to say.
Yeah, we'll open that up, and if there's anybody else that wants to voice their opinion or has anything to say, we'll open that up for a minute. I will allow you 3 minutes. Okay, we'll move on. We need to approve the agenda for June 25th, minutes from June 13th, and the payment.
I make a motion that we approve the consent items, agenda, June 25th, minutes for June 13th, and the approval of payment report for June 25th.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. As far as the report, I'd just like to thank our office staff and council members and the police department, everybody for this week. It's been a really tough week trying to get this budget straightened out and make what money we have go around. It's pretty tight. We appreciate the work that the police department has done here. We're just looking at a lot of different options. I think we're going with the best option that we have right now. Anyway, we'll move on down into some of these discussion items. If Ted would like to come up and do a discussion on our budget.
You all have a copy of the budget as,
This one?
no, it should say.
The newest version. Has the,
Yeah, yes, that's the new budget reflecting what the Lars, our accountant, or consultant, has added to in light of the budget that was approved from the previous meeting. A few items that I wanted to bring up with regards to the budget that's kind of making it,
Just to click, we didn't approve that budget
you know,
last meeting.
we approved positions that were reflected into the budget.
Okay.
And so the additional staff and the additional personnel are now reflected in this draft budget.
it's the one with the
It's
dark,
called tentative, yes.
Okay, okay.
And so the initial one was called a draft, then we go to tentative, and then there will be another final stage. And the final stage will probably, we were hoping to have it done before fiscal year end, but it will not happen. Lars is in Finland, and he won't be able to get that done before the fiscal year, which has happened before. It's not a major item. As you look at the budget, I'd like to there's some summary pages that are probably more important, but in background, our revenues, HUF for dealing with the roads and such, it's down, and it'll probably go down a little more, is what they're projecting. Growth in Arizona has been less than it was projected, and so there's been a little bit of decrease there. So we have a decline in income that we've got used to, and so the state transaction privilege tax was up to 2.5%, but then we had a decrease in the urban revenue sharing, URE, of 0.1%, 1% less. And state income tax is lower than projected. They estimate a 19% decline. And the vehicle license tax is up 18%. So as you got to realize that those are things that are not reflected in the budget. These are just things that I'd found out after, and so we used past going forward as best, on the projections, but we didn't have this information, so we probably will have less revenue than what we hoped. Now, what we're hoping.
On page 5 of 32, line 10-34-82, what is perpetual care?
And I wish Lars was on the phone with us so he could give it.
It's a little far from Finland.
What page is that on?
Page 5. It's the first general revenue.
$500. I do not know what that is.
Oh, I mean, it's
It's $500 and it's
negligible. I was just curious what perpetual care was.
charges and service, that's under the general revenue, but it's under seminary plots. I would assume that it was just the general care. But I would refer that to Lars with the $500. With regards to the budget, there are documents that they're a tentative adoption. I'm not just reading this directly from an email. The official tentative budget is on the state auditor general forms, which the council will have to adopt. So we'll be adopting that. At the meeting, we will have council decide when to hold a public meeting on final budget. So we'll have another meeting similar to this where the final budget will be, where you'll say final. In turn, it can be at the earliest 2 weeks after adoption, but before that will be published in the newspaper once a week for 2 consecutive weeks to advertise for a public hearing. So there's some steps there that
we have to follow. And we learned that because of some of the audit findings and such. There was also a clarification on the law enforcement. The law enforcement submitted an amount, and they were correct, and Lars made an adjustment for that. And it was, but in the end, there was still, it was $21,000 light, but it was not the 513,000. So he did find and make a correction on that.
That was under personnel.
Yes, under personnel. And that's this document right here.
That would be the employee benefits that we were wrong on.
Yes, that's the email dated June 22nd. And it's from Lars Johnson clarifying the change that he made in the budget so that the law enforcement would actually get greater credit. So that helped in that situation. Also, last week when we approved a position, I researched a little bit about the Arizona labor laws. And Lars kind of tuned me into this. And the Arizona a part-time employee, if you pay 30 hours, they have to have benefits, 30 or more, so they'd have benefits. And then we also found out that there's a rule in Arizona called the 20/20 rule. That means if you have worked 20 hours, you have to have a pension. So we approved a position that we said it would be 20 hours or more. 20 hours or less, but it needs to be 19 or less. Yeah. And so when we posted it, we will have them sign a statement that even though we posted 20, the actual amount will be 19. Does that make sense? And that's for the clerk that will be helping the law enforcement with theirs.
So just for my slow brain, 20 hours, they have to be on pension, 30 or more, they have to have
Benefits. Yeah, so to not have any benefits at all, you can't go over 19 hours in a pay week.
Now, that's not the same as our code says, right?
What's that?
Our code is different, right?
Yes, and this
Our
is
city
just,
code.
this is from June 9th, 2024, Arizona labor laws, which
Okay,
explain that.
so we're gonna have to
And-
revisit our code, get it.
And you all have a copy of that. You may not have a copy of it. I have them right here. That's there. That pretty much covers the budget and where we stand, but we also have, relating to the budget is the audit. And we are at that stage where the audit has to be submitted by this Friday. And so it is now in a draft stage, and they will be updating it into a final stage. So I have a copy of this. It's big, but I put the summaries on the top, and if you could review this during the week.
Yeah, put one there for him.
And then we'll have the mayor will approve it for us to send to the state auditors.
It'll give you nightmares.
I highlighted one item on there, on the journal entries, and it kind of tells you where the summaries are. The little yellow tab, it'll save you a lot of time so that you don't have to read the body of, because it's a lot of it's just a revised kind of a budget analysis. But if you could read those, that tab, there's 4 items: a draft financial statement, a draft AELR, and then a draft findings, and the MDA and template, which is what will go to the state.
So if I understand right, there was like 28 specific things that we had to address, not even counting this. Were a lot of those taken care of?
Yes, we contacted the previous accountant, Margaret, and put them in, and Lars and Margaret worked together, and and they couldn't find what they were looking for to take off those significant findings, but they did work together to try to resolve that, and then there's a lot of items that we will be continuing to pursue once we can have the staff to pursue them. They're not, the audit findings, even though they're there and they may look like they're being ignored, they're not gonna be. But there's a lot of good recommendations that they give us, and a lot of those have been put in place when Tracy Goodall was here, and she was working very hard on trying to get those done. In particular on our accounting and our receipts and our other things. So we're going in the right direction and going there fairly fast. And now we're at that point where you approve or discuss the budget. And I'll just turn the time back to you, but that's the report.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the effort you put into that. Do you guys mind if we switch item number 1 to last and move these other items up? Then we'll have them all together.
Okay.
With what we've just talked about. So we'll go to action item number 2, discussion possible action regarding defund police and go to county contractor significantly reduce police force. And it's what this is all about is with this budget, we're having a hard time getting where we need to be with our budget. And so we had looked at several other ways to make this thing work, and we've had a lot of public comment throughout the week, and we've done a lot of research on our own as far as what would happen with the county if we was to put them back in here over us. Any other councilor members have thoughts on this?
So basically, we've got three options. If you keep doing what you've been doing, you're gonna keep getting what you've been getting, but that applies not only to today, that applies to 4 or 5 or 6 years ago. And we actually reached out to the county a few years ago and just said, hey, so what are our options? And at that time, and still today, you've got to put in a request for performance, and then the county will review it, and then they will determine how many officers you may get. When we talked to them before, they said that the officer that lives here now would not be included in that. They could send somebody else. At that time, it was $200,000 per officer to have the contract. So if you want it, depending on the coverage, and I actually thought there might be people show up here tonight with pitchforks and torches, but so far nobody has. But the money thing, I also talked to the county sheriff who lives here and just said, what are your thoughts? And he said, I honestly don't know if the county still does that, but I spoke with another town that did that it's a small town like us. They had a police force of 6, and they were struggling with their budget, and they chose to make a contract with the county, and the county agreed to, this is not Coconino County, but the county agreed to 4 officers. And they said that the methamphetamine and the drug deals and the crime just got completely out of hand. And the other problem that they ran into using county contract personnel was the town had no say in what went on. It's like, well, we're here and we're gonna do it the way we want. And that particular town did that for 3 years till crime got so bad and they were overrun with meth that the town got back together and said, we'd like the police force again. And so they have 6 officers again. And they said they're very happy with that. The only reason I looked at this was let's just make some comparisons for money. And it's been 3 or 4 years ago since I talked to the sheriff of Coconino, and he's not even the same guy that's in there today. But you were looking at that time at $200,000 per officer. That's out the door though. You don't provide nothing. They provide the guns and the money and whatever. So if you wanted 3 officers through the county, it would be a minimum of 600,000 for 3 officers. If you want 4 officers, it'd be a minimum of 800,000. But what was interesting to me is when I talked to the deputy sheriff that lives here, he goes, "Are you actually thinking about doing that?" And I said, we're just looking at everything. And he said, "There is no way you can do that." He goes, "If you expect me to do it," he said, "I've had my ass handed to me. I'm getting 20 hours of overtime," and he goes, "I can't keep up." And he said, "If you choose that, you will not get the coverage that you've been getting." So I think that was kind of a compliment. So we could choose to say we're not gonna deal with the guns and the cars and the liability and the gas and the drama and everybody being upset, but if we turn it over to the county, it'll be the county. And what they say will be what happens. The other thing you could do is just say, well, let's stay in charge of our own police force. Let's cut the police force down to maybe 2 or 3 people. But I would have to say, let's take a look at what that looks like. And if you lived here 5 years ago, if you walk down the streets right now, or you walk down the streets 5 years ago, you're gonna see a totally different thing going on. And the other thing is, I don't know if people in town, it's like, well, what the hell do the cops do? Well, they go on, it's almost comical, the domestic disputes that they have to be involved in. And I can't even say details, but I know some people, and while they're on this domestic dispute, now they've found a dead body over here, and a group of Chinese national military age young men drove through town going 80 miles an hour. And people may think that all they do is give tickets, but I think that there may be a lot more going on in town than people realize. So if you look back to what we had, and in saying that, in support of the 2 officers who were here, I think there's a lot of us in town, myself included, that ripped on those 2 officers. It's like, well, what are you doing? Where are you going? Well, they were getting kitty cats out of trees. They were getting in between a stepdaughter trying to take crap out of her stepdad's house. They were dealing with all that. And on top of that, the town had policies back then where they couldn't buy the guns they needed. They couldn't buy the bullets they needed. They couldn't go to the trainings they needed. And myself included, and I probably owe those guys an apology, but they were not able to do their job because the town did not have their back. And my family and myself personally got to experience what it looks like if you have a gang of thugs living in town. And that's part of the reason I'm here today. As I said, never again. That's as long as I have a voice. So some people say the police department is our pet, and written by Christy Riddle's own hand, our town mission statement says we are a town that provides water and services, fire and police. And that's our simple town statement. And I think it's pretty simple. If you don't have air, you die in 3 minutes. If you don't have water, you die in 3 days. And if you don't have food, you die in 3 weeks. And it's not our responsibility as a town to provide the food, but if you look at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the very bottom one is your basic physiological needs. You gotta have food, you gotta have water. The next one up is you need shelter and safety. So the problem with that is once you get your basic physiological needs met, and then you've got a cave to live in, there's somebody else coming to get your stuff. And so all of those 3 basic needs, the need for basic physiological needs, safety, all the other things are included to have a happy life, but if you don't have those basics, so that's how I look at the police and our fire department and our public works. So that's where I'm coming from. So let me finish real quick. The other option would be to reduce the police force. And I've talked to other towns that are 4, 5, 6 times bigger than us, and they have 6 or 8 policemen. And so people say, well, why would Fredonia need 4 or 5 policemen? And it's not necessarily the population, but there's 24 hours in the day, whether you have 1,000 people or whether you have 10,000 people. And there are certain times of the day that things go on. So that's what we're looking at. So as we put it down as discussion and possible action, but I've spent a lot of time on this, as have other people. And I think that so let me clarify one other thing too. The state of Utah requires that every town has 7% of their operating funds in a contingency fund. And the state of Utah also says if you have more than 15% in your contingency fund, you have to lower taxes. So the state of Utah regulates their town. You can't have this or you can't have this. But it's pretty much a basic rule in accounting. And the city of Phoenix, they had a statute that said we will require 4.5% contingency fund of your total operating costs. And that 4.5% comes from FEMA. If the crap hits the fan and everything falls apart, you need to have the ability as a town to exist for 45 days on that contingency fund. And that's where that 4.5% comes in. And I know the last 4 years, we spent a lot of money because we were not up to par on some things. There were also things that we spent money on that we did not know. You gotta have a gun and a baseball bat if you're gonna be a policeman. If you don't at least have a gun and a baseball bat, you're in trouble. So anyway, looking back at it, I think the track record shows that we have spent money on the police department, but I think we're at a point, and I think the concern for some people in town and the concern for our accountant was we spent this, but we had 1 officer. Then we spent this, but we had 2. Then we spent this, and they say, where does it end? Well, with our contingency fund situation, we do have to get a hold of it, and we do need to curtail some spending. And it's not just the police department, though, is what people need to understand. There's other places that we need to look at. So as far as making any radical decisions, if you look at the budget that our accountant put together and look at this, there's also some options and some other things that we could do that I'd rather not make some radical decision tonight. I think I'd like to go back to the drawing board because I do think that there's some things that we can do and not just throw the baby out with the bath.
I would like to mention something, and Chief, if I go too far, throw something at me. I don't know how many people know in the last month 2 months, our police officers have confiscated how many thousand pills? You don't need to tell us, because it's approaching with the fentanyl. Now, fentanyl is deadly. They have made enough stops and whatnot like that. I'm trying to give you as much as I can without walking on them. It's approaching the thousands. And fentanyl is deadly. It's not just a bad drug, it's deadly. And that kind of stuff doesn't get told to the community. We're making exceptions. We've all talked about it. We've all said that the things that these people have done for us in the last 2 months, fentanyl is deadly. If you take 1 grain of it, and I mean 1 little tiny grain too much, you're dead. And our community sits right on the junction from major highways from 2 or 3 states right here. And so I'm not going to say much, because I just I hurt.
Kenny, do you have anything you'd like to comment on?
Yeah, I think we need to think about this real strong, and I think we need to come to the reality, we gotta make some big cuts or something.
Yep.
And my opinion is I do not want the county to take over our police department. I do not like to hear that at all. I'd rather have it in-house, where it's all, where we can take care of it own. And that's all I gotta say.
So there's probably a lot of you wondering, well, why'd you even put this on the agenda if you've already made your mind up? Personally, I was hoping a lot of the naysayers would be here tonight and be able to hear some of this budget stuff. And there's only one way that you can talk about it, is by putting it on the agenda. And this was our way of getting it put on the agenda so that we could talk about it. Personally, I'm really happy with what's going on with the police department. They have been bending over backwards to make cuts in their proposed budget. And we're still talking to them about cuts, and they're working on their end. We're working on our end. And I like Dirk and the other council members. I think we need to take a step back this week and take another look at this budget. I think there's some other things that we can do so that we're not put in that situation. Maybe we can go through these other action items, and then we can make some motions on what we want to do.
Let's just table it.
Yeah, let's just table it for now,
Okay.
because we're gonna have some more meetings on it, and where motions and everything will be made, so.
Wait, one last thing, it's hard to stand up in public and make a fool of yourself. I do it all the time. But if you've got something to say, and if there's somebody watching on TV and you're cussing us, write a letter. We have complaint forms, but I tell you, I'm here because I've got a personal agenda, not for myself, but for our town. And but at the same time, we represent you. So if you guys have something you want and we don't know it, it's impossible to know what you don't know. So speak up or write a letter. I'm done.
It all comes down to the 24-hour day deal. I mean, you've got to have that coverage, and there's no way to do it with unless you get up to around 4 or 5 officers. There's no way that you can get the coverage that you need. And so that's kind of where we're at. We're stuck between the coverage and the budget. So we're trying to figure out a way that we can make it work for both sides, and we would like any comments or suggestions or whatever you guys are willing to give us, because we are between a rock and a hard spot on this thing. And we want to show our support to the police and thank them for what they've done, and I think they've done a heck of a job. So we'll move down to discussion and possible action regarding revisiting the approved positions by the city council on June 13th. Ted talked a little bit about that, about the part-time stuff that we're gonna have to talk about, make some adjustments and find out what's going on with that.
Was there anything specific on that, Ted?
Well, it's posted, but what we're gonna do is, it does say 20 hours, but when they come in, we're gonna make sure that they understand it's 19. When the interview and others, that takes place before they're hired. So
Okay.
I think we're clean on that, and then it's just a matter of the other positions that we approve. You want me to come forward, or?
Whatever you got.
Just so I'm heard. I think we're pretty good on the positions as far as them being reflected in the budget, and the 19 hours is fixed, and it's reflected in the budget. It's the other positions that we approved. We were hoping to get it down, further down than what we did, but it didn't come true. And so we're faced with that reality. One thing that I would like to emphasize too, again, I did use the open forum, but the police are, just integral. Having it tabled with, I understand that you want to get input, but it's, the budget's there, and we have money, but it's just a matter of how long does our savings last. And if we can cut in other places, but it's not capital, it has to be operational, O&M type stuff. That's where it gets you. Because I went through 2 layoffs in Salt River, and they're ugly. They're not what you want to do, and we don't want to get to that place in 3 years or 4 years and just kick the can down the road.
So clarify something for me. The capital outlay does come straight off the bottom line, but the operating costs, is there a state statute? So if you can leave your contingency fund alone, and not dip into it, but where does this formula come from that your operating costs versus capital outlay have to be a certain thing?
Well, I came from the power plant, and I don't know the town like we talked to today,
So businesses are different than
Yeah.
municipal. Doesn't mean we can spend money, just like,
O&M, it was operation and maintenance, same thing as, just a different term, I'm sorry. Our operating budget was extremely scrutinized on additions, because we went from 1,000 employees at one time down to 800, down to 600, and down to 400. So we witnessed that hurt with families, attrition. And my concern is, are we gonna face that 3 years from now? Now, we have a business here that they're on the agenda. That's gonna help us. What they plan on with their grocery store, which they're gonna be presenting here in a few minutes, that's gonna help. We have 3 subdivisions that are, that look like are gonna be coming in. But one thing that Fredonia doesn't have, that I don't think Fredonia realizes, is when we pay our state, our property tax, Fredonia doesn't get any of that back. It goes to the state and the county. There is none that comes to Fredonia, and Fredonia would have to vote on that. We get sales tax, but we do not get anything from the property tax.
one thing to add to that, and again, not to beat the dead horse of the police department, but the police department brings in excess of 500,000, and the state takes 67% of that. And the track record was this year it's gonna be around 230. some of the numbers that we had though, either there's been money come out of that before it came back to the town over and above the 67%. And the police department is not the only department that brings money into the town. The water department does, our wastewater does, our power company does. But in support of them though, with all that, and even in this year's budget, they actually put a lower anticipated number for the police department than what they did this year. And we do not do quotas, never have, never will. But knowing what goes on out there, I'm fully confident that they'll bring in at least what they brought in.
Yes, and Serena supplied me with the law enforcement. They're extremely busy. I witnessed some stuff on the back street here last night, and we witnessed it on the streets. But Serena got me some. I mean, if you can imagine, 2,369 citations in 2023. Do you mind me giving those values?
I'll review the numbers,
Okay.
percentages, yeah.
But they're extremely busy, and they do a lot. And I'll let Serena defend that, but we did look at, and you have that in front of you, what it would cost if we cut different positions. And I looked at all positions, from maintenance to clerical to the support we need in our office here, the deputy marshal, all of it, so you have the value, so that you can see what it would cost.
Thank you.
But I'm hoping that our incomes will come up with what we have going right now.
And I think we might be able to work with some stuff.
I do too.
Lisa, we'll give you 3 minutes.
I had a question regarding the 20 hours, and I'm not arguing, okay? I'm just wondering. At one point, when I was at the school and when I was at the town office, there was a time limit on that. If it was a temporary position, they could work 30 hours and not have to have benefits if it was less than 6 months, a year or
Yeah, but
something?
it's changed,
Has it changed?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we researched that.
Okay. okay,
That was Laura sent me that.
okay.
I know I have quite a few questions on this budget that I think Lars, we need him here so we can ask those questions. There's a lot of the deductions that come out of there, like for example, guns and uniforms and stuff like that we can put out over 3 or 4 years. And it's all put in here at once. I mean, it's not a huge amount, but every dollar is gonna help. And I wish he was here so we could ask him some of this stuff, but he'll be back and we can talk about this a little bit more. I think we're gonna be able to get where we need to be with this. We'll move on down to discussion 4. Discussion and possible action regarding the increase in IGA for additional full-time clerk and increase in the judge's salary. Do you mind coming up and sharing?
And just to address, Dirk, some of your numbers, I have all the numbers here, I shared them with Ted. So last year, just as a little overview, the court received filings from the marshals, or for the police department, 2,369. So there was almost 2,400 citations issued, which is so much more than it was, each year. Total fines processed was 514,000. What came back to the town general fund is 213,590, which is 41%. When you're talking 67%, Dirk, so what happens
That's
is,
stuck in my head.
the 67 is a number, but we have to assign a base fine to everything that the officers cite. We have a base fine, and then from that fine, there's the base fine. 67 or 68% of that base fine goes back to the state, but then there's all these other additional funds on top of it. So our base fine, Dusty, if I'm thinking like a base fine of $50, the total fine's what, a couple $100? Yes, so the 67% is just off that base, then we add to it. So when I give you the reports that tell you how much comes back to the town, which is, last year was 41% of what we took in, that's simply what comes back to the general fund. There are also funds that come back for law enforcement. There's like highway funds. There's other funds the town gets, but we're just reporting specifically what comes to the general fund to be used in the general budget. So the town does get more than what we say. It's just, if I was to give you, you would have a multiple huge page report from us, which we can provide if you'd like to.
You've done that before.
Yeah, so
We-
67%
because
is of the
we had
base fund,
had we had had a question, the 230,000 comes back to the general fund.
general fund, yeah.
And the police department received 700.
No, they receive much more than that. That might have been on 1 month.
Yeah, well, there was like one thing at the end, maybe it wasn't 700, maybe it was 7,000 or
They get
something.
something, because there's, in our funds, there's gonna be like, peace officers equipment fund that comes back to the town. There's, there's a whole bunch, and some go to the state for DNA testing, some go for victims' rights, but it's just 67% or 68% of that base fine. Okay, so back to addressing, the agenda item. In 2019, we co-located the two courts together, and that's when Dusty was a 20-hour employee. And so we entered into an IGA with the county for court services, and she went over, we are all located over at the Justice Court now, where we have.
At that time, was the county paying Dusty's salary
No, the town was paying Dusty's salary,
the whole time?
well, until we did the IGA. And then the county pays, the town pays a lump sum to the county, and it covered Dusty's salary and some facilities. And the agreement was, in that original IGA, when filings reached 1,000, we would renegotiate. Well, the next year, filings reached 1,000. We went from like 400 a year to 1,000 fairly quickly. So in 2021, which we'd been negotiating since 2020, Dusty went to 40 hours and the IGA was increased. And that's the last time we've increased it, and that was when we hit 1,000 filings. Well, we've now hit 2,369 last year, and we're on track to be over 2,000 this year. And that's why we're asking for another 40-hour full-time employee. And we talked about it last meeting, but we weren't specifically on the agenda. And I provided all the information last meeting, but it looks like it was, and Ted, it got put in the budget, correct? Those numbers were put in the budget? The current amount for 2 full-time employees would increase, would bring our total IGA to 161,852, and it's on our budget page there. We put those numbers in the budget. And we needed another full-time employee a year and a half ago, and we did come, but we just missed the budget cycle last year. I think we came in August, so we came back in January to remind you that with budget season coming, we're gonna need to plan for it. And so now we're asking you to execute what we really need, which is another full-time clerk. Dusty's currently working at least a minimum of 12 hours a day just to keep her head above water with all the filings.
So enlighten me on the court IGA then, the new employee at 40 hours, will the town pay all that, or does the county pay part of that? Because not all of what you do is just town stuff.
So,
That's a question, not a statement.
yeah. Well, are you talking about the employee?
So like under judicial, under court IGA, it's 161,852.
That's for 2 employees, plus there's a nominal amount for supplies and I don't know if they charge for facilities. Let me pull out our old IGA. I have the most recent agreement, so I can tell you what they're charging. I have it here. I brought it with me. So, all right, so, make sure I'm looking at the right one. Here's our original. Okay, original, and here's our amended. Okay, so last time, for 40 hours, it was a total of 76. 60,000 was salaries, which was the base salary plus the medical benefits, the EREs. So the salary was a total of 60,000. There was 1,500 for office supplies, computer and printer, which we rent from the Supreme Court, 750. Travel's about 1,000. Then indirect costs were in, there was a grand total of 76. So there was
That's everything.
that's everything. So we're doubling it, it'd be about 161 is what the county's estimating.
What about the county cases? Do you guys try them, or do they go downstate, or?
County cases go to the Justice Court, which is handled in the same building, but that was Tina and Summer handled Justice Court. Tina's left, so we're looking to replace those lost hours, and those are 100% covered by the county.
Okay,
So the court combines staff, so county pays all the staff, but the city reimburses the county for some of that, like our supplies and salaries for the municipal court employees. But we're all co-located in the Justice Court building. But we handle all of county, all of DPS, and all of Fredonia Marshals, and also Game and Fish in that building.
But those other two employees.
The other two
are
employees.
paid.
Now, you're
So-
gonna get a little bit of crossover, because if Dusty answers the phone and it's someone for the Justice Court, she'll process a payment.
She should
Some-
hang up.
Yeah, she should hang up, right? Summer's probably doing quite a bit of Justice Court. On the weekends, whatever clerk's available comes in to handle whatever case. And then the Justice Court handles any felony filings through the Fredonia Police Department, because Magistrate Court has no jurisdiction over felonies, but Justice Court can at least initial appearance them and see them. So that's what we're asking, is to have that position approved. I have talked to the county. The Board of Supervisors goes on vacation for the entire month of June, so they wouldn't actually have an IGA ready to sign until probably August. But we want to make sure it gets, if possible, get approved on the budget, so we're ready to go when we get that IGA ready to be signed off on.
Council, just a side note, their bidding process is through, part of the agreement is the county will post we don't post it on the Fredonia website. It's in the agreement that we don't. Just so that everyone knows in the room that they're not getting an exception on how it's bid. They have to bid through the county process.
For the employee that we will then
We're not
pay.
under Fredonia Council.
Okay.
Because they're technically county employees, they're under county benefits.
So I'm coming up with 82,115, and you said that it would be like 76,000. Was the extra?
Well, here's what I received from our deputy court administrator. She said she just received the numbers from HR, and it looks like the amount for the new position would be approximately $77,847 annually. And then, so with the current amount included, the total overall cost looks to be about $161,852, or $40,463 quarterly. And you pay that quarterly to the county. That's paid quarterly by the town to the county.
And then is the salary established? Is that already established? Is that since it goes through the county?
It's under the county listings. And actually, based on what I saw through the county pays less than the town for a starting clerk. So, yeah. Which that didn't happen a couple years ago. The county always paid really well, but the towns boosted, so.
And so what happens if we say we're not gonna approve that and you can't have the extra employee? Will Dusty be angry?
So I'm gonna tell you what would happen. We would fail our audits. There is no way we could maintain the workload. We're already drowning, and summer picks up quite a bit for you, right, too? So, I mean, the county's already doing the work of the town. So it's already overlapping, because Dusty can't handle it all. If it was to continue without another employee, we would get behind. We have to post payments every day. I mean, we are legally bound to do things in a timely manner, and we get audited. We self-audit once a year, we get a main audit, a financial audit every 3 years, and we have an operational review with the Supreme Court every 10, which we just got notified, we're having it next month, so. We would get behind. At some point, the court could be seized, because we wouldn't be complying with state standards, which means the state would take your court over and manage it. We simply don't have hours in the day and enough employees to handle the amount of work coming in.
yeah, they can't.
And I will say, the citations we get from the officers are good. We're not getting, if anyone in town thinks they're just writing bogus stuff, they're not. We are receiving a lot of work. Our numbers have gone up drastically in the past couple years.
Okay. We'll kind of lump these three together as
Okay, and the
So-
second part of that was the judicial salary. For the first 10 years of, I don't know if we want to talk numbers, but for the first 10 years, I made less than a pool cleaner as the judge. I never came and asked for a raise. It was important to me that our staff got paid, that we got them up to where we need to be. A couple years ago, I came and we did get it bumped up a little, and we decided we would address it every year. And for some reason, it kept getting tabled. It had something to do with the contract not being, anyway, so I'm coming back to say, I think we need to revisit that. We've put it in the budget, the numbers in the budget, if you wanna look. I don't know if we want to just.
10-4211?
10-42. Oh, you're looking at the line item?
Page 14.
I don't have page numbers, but it would be,
Salaries and wages judicial.
yep, that's the one.
So there's the increase in that salary and then the extra employee. So,
And that salary, so judges' salaries in the county are based off of, there's called judicial productivity credits, and they're based off of how many filings we use. And that salary that I've requested, that I've listed, would be approximately 35% of a full-time presiding judge's salary, based off of the productivity statistics. So that's coming off the Arizona state statute for county judges. So I didn't just pull that number out of a hat. That's
okay.
with the productivity credits.
So this was presented at 2 meetings ago, and it's been presented again tonight, and it says discussion and possible action. Is this something we want to vote on?
Yeah, I think we need to move forward with that part of it.
Well, I make a motion then that we approve the 40 hours for the new employee and the salary increase for the judicial.
We have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Do we have a motion on the other 2 items?
Which ones?
Discussion item 2 and 3.
I just, I make a motion on on number 2, we just said, let's just table that to come back to it.
Okay.
Mayor, you have the people go from Mesa here and there up on the agenda.
For number 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
We're
wanted
watching.
I just want to finish these 3 things real quick, and then you're good, thank you. I didn't realize that's what it was. I thought it was just a zone change or something, the way it was on here, and I apologize about putting it clear to the end. So on 3,
I make a motion to let we approved it, I make a motion to leave it the way it is, but we are, with the caveat that we are gonna go back through the budget and work on some stuff.
Okay.
But the clerk position, I'm assuming that the stick in the mud here is the new officer for the police, or did that include all the clerks?
Well, there's 3 positions that were kind of related with that, and that's why.
The clerk for the office, the part-time clerk for the office manager for the police, and then the new officer, those 3?
Yeah, and it's in support of what Serena just said about keeping up with audit. That was part of one of our audit findings, is not having a number of needed personnel so that we can keep up with that and have the checks and balances. And that same logic exists in the other, in our office in here. If anybody goes, leaves or is on sick, we're sunk. We have 2 people. Cecil comes in on his own, and I'm coming in on my own, and one of the audit findings is just what Serena mentioned. We need to do something about having enough personnel to meet the needs.
So we made a motion and approved it, and I make a motion that motion stands.
have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Does that include the other clerk position for in here? Are you addressing
Yes.
that at the same time?
Yes.
Or is that separate?
Yes,
So we continue to bid them.
yes. Okay, and we'll move up to discussion item 1. I apologize for dumping you back to the back of the deal.
I want to say something here. This is hard for me to say. Many of you people in here don't know who the guy is sitting back there in the white cowboy hat. And I don't mean me. Matt Salmon is who it is. And if any of you are old enough like me, you remember that he was a state representative for several years and did a lot of good for the state. In fact, one of the things is that he promised that, well, I'll only serve for so many years because I don't want to be a stick in the mud. And he kept his word. And now he's here representing another company that is trying to expand into our town and already has one facility, but now they want a second in here. I just wanted everybody to know a little bit about who he is. I'm not gonna blow his horn. He can do that if he wants to. But my folks knew him when he was in the National House of Representatives. And so, Matt?
Thank you.
I guess he just gave you the floor.
Sit down and shut up. Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here. Mayor and members of council. Last time I was here, you might remember, we took 3 parcels and split them into 2. And then that had to go back to the county for the new numbering. The new numbering's back, and so what we're hoping is that the southernmost parcel of that would be rezoned from open space to commercial, so that we can commence building.
Okay.
That's
And
what,
has that been brought before planning and zoning? Do we know?
All of that was.
Oh, okay.
That has
I mean, the
been-
commercial part of it, being made commercial, okay.
right,
Okay,
that's it.
awesome.
All right, thank you, and thank you. Good to see you.
I make a motion that we approve rezoning the parcel numbers on Cowboy Drive and US Highway 89A
To commercial.
to commercial.
Do we have
I'll
a,
second it.
I'll second.
We'll let him do it.
all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We'll get it right one of these days. Okay, thank you. Any of you have any items that you would want to put on the agenda? Let me know and we'll get them put on there. So we'll adjourn at 8:06.
Oh, no. We need to discuss incorporating like the south or east part of the sawmill. That needs to be on the agenda.
Right, for future items.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
And I think we've some stuff out today that's good news on that, so I'll talk to you about
Okay. Well, we may not need to go through that then.
Okay.
Okay.
it. We'll adjourn at 8:07.